There we go. We are live, baby. What's going on? Welcome to Fight Week on 5, brought to you by the 5 Region Sports Network. I'm your host, Jonathan, aka 3-Piece Combo, and I am joined by the Fight Genius. You can find him on Twitter at Alf Artiaga, Alf _Artiaga. I think that might be. My man, Alf, how you doing, brother?
Great.
We have a pretty wonderful fight coming up this weekend. It's the first ever unification bout in the super welterweight division. We have Jermell Charlo. I have to make sure I have the right twin over there, taking on Brian Castano at 154 pounds. Before we get into the X and O's of this fight, I want to talk a little bit of the significance of what's going on here, because in a 4-belt division, right, this is the first time for 154 pounds that we're seeing this belt or this division be unified. Speak to me on what the significance of that is.
Well, historically, the 154 pounds, which some call junior middleweight or super welterweight, depending on which organization holds the belt, used to be like a weigh station, really, between welterweight and middleweight. As nobody really made fights at 154, so guys would either move from 147 to 160 or 147 and beyond, but they would hardly ever fight for titles at 154. We're talking about the 80s, the 70s, and the 80s, and parts of the 90s. So 154 is kind of a new phenomenon, but it's also kind of sticking to its old boxing roots. There's no money at 154. Nobody gets really excited at 154 unless they make a catch weight like Floyd Mayweather did against Canelo Alvarez, where they essentially created a belt that didn't exist, and because Canelo Alvarez really couldn't get down to 147.
Right.
That's the only reason why they decided, you know what, we'll fight at 154. And, there's been many catch weights, many big fights at catch weights around 154, but as a championship, junior middleweight, super welterweight, it's never really been a thing, and I don't think it will be a thing. And the way that this division is kind of shaking out and the way it's kind of structured, it won't be a thing either, because all the fights are at 160 and 168.
So do you think this division will be something that's kind of passed over as a middle spot in between more of the two bigger divisions?
Yeah, this is essentially, call it for what it is. It's a tournament division. You get out of this division, you're moving on to 160. You're going to be in big fights, big money fights. You got to dominate this division. And winner of this fight, and to be honest with you, Jermell Charlo kind of deserves top billing. Okay, he's the real A side in this fight, even though Brian Castano is a serious contender. Jermell Charlo is the best 154-pounder in the world, in my opinion, even if some of the 147 guys move up. Even Errol Spence. If Errol Spence manages to move up to 154 to fight Jermell Charlo, I would make Jermell Charlo a favorite against Errol Spence. So he's a legitimate star, and he deserves to move up and fight bigger fights at 160, which he will.
Yeah, if he gets it done this weekend, he absolutely will, because that'll make it much more of a massive fight. Speaking unto Errol Spence, one of the guys that Brian Castano actually beat on the amateur circuits was Errol Spence, which is really interesting. I think he has an amateur record of 180 and like 6 or 180 and 7. I don't remember the exact number, but 190 plus amateur fights. He's coming into this fight as, obviously the underdog. Jermell Charlo is the favorite in this fight. Let's take a look at the underdog side of things first. I want to talk on Brian Castano because I feel like he's lesser of the known of the two fighters, and he's probably not getting the credit he deserves for being somebody that's undersized in the division, really.
Yeah, and a couple of fights back, I think he, the reason he doesn't get a lot of talk is, first of all, he's a guy that's, he fought outside the country for most of his career. When he finally came down to the United States, he wasn't considered a top prospect, but then he came back and he fought Erislandy Lara. And Erislandy Lara is a guy that, talk to any boxing fan, any, boxing aficionado will tell you, he's a tough nut to crack. He's also a champion at 154, by the way. Erislandy Lara, in my opinion, and in the opinion of many, beat Canelo Alvarez. He beat him. Okay? If you're going to score the fight, you can watch it. I believe that fight is on YouTube. Sit down, grab yourself a Coke, a coffee, whatever you want to drink, sit down, get some popcorn or whatever, some water, and watch that fight calmly. And in fact, turn down the volume, okay? Because Canelo has his fans in the booth.
Biased commentary, I'm sure.
All right, watch that fight, and if you come away with thinking that Canelo Alvarez beat Erislandy Lara, then okay, then maybe I'm blind, and maybe everybody else that I know that watched that fight is blind. But Erislandy Lara beat Canelo Alvarez. He just did. Well, Brian Castano got into it with Erislandy Lara a couple of years ago and got a draw out of it. I felt he won that fight. I felt that they put a finger on the scale for Erislandy Lara because they wanted to keep him alive in the division. For what? I don't know, because nobody wants to fight him. Because Erislandy Lara is a guy that you look bad against. He's awkward. He gives you a lot of angles. He's very active. He was a amateur champion from Cuba. So, he has every trick in the book. He's a tough guy to look good against. Brian Castano, in my opinion, beat him. They give him a draw. That vaulted him to the top of the division. And here we are today on the eve of Brian Castano fighting for Jermell Charlo's championship.
Wow. So you're bringing us right up to date. Absolutely. He has that, like you said, he's had the tests with the guys that have pushed the upper level guys to the limit. And I mean, if he went to a draw with somebody who beat Canelo, you have to think about kind of, transitive property doesn't necessarily work in combat sports, but you have to kind of still think on that scale. He's on that kind of level where he can hang with those kind of guys. So he's coming in, obviously, like we talked about, he's slightly small for the division, but it hasn't stopped him from becoming the WBO champion, right? I mean, he's still doing his thing regardless of being undersized for the division, but the way he does it is he gets inside. He's one of the best inside fighters in boxing, honestly. But he does a good job of getting inside, ripping hooks to the body, coming upstairs, good uppercuts. He uses that size a little bit effectively to kind of evade and get inside. I think, with him, he's just going to have to make sure he stays inside. Pressure Jermell Charlo, because if he pressures him and keeps him on the back foot, I think it'll be a little harder. Not to say that Charlo isn't a great counterpuncher, which he is, but I think pressuring him to the point where he's frustrating him will be one of his keys to victory. How do you feel about what he needs to do to get this win?
You're talking about Castano or Charlo?
Castano.
All right, Castano. Yeah, he's gonna have to up the pressure big time. He's gonna have to do a lot of what he did against Erislandy Lara. What he did against Erislandy Lara is he took away angles, because Lara is a guy that is never in one place. Okay, Erislandy Lara will throw a jab right in front of you, and then next thing you know, he's to your flank and he's throwing a hook to the body. He gives you constant angles. So against a guy like Jermell Charlo, which in my opinion, and I've said this before, he's the better Charlo. I know he's the one with the loss, but he's the better Charlo. The other one is undefeated with the gaudy record. This is, in my opinion, the better Charlo. He has a mean streak. If you notice, ever since he lost to Tony Harrison, which he didn't lose that fight, okay, I saw that fight. I thought it was a great fight. It was close. For whatever reason, the judges got all excited and handed a unanimous decision to Tony Harrison. What happened when they had the rematch?
Knockout.
Exactly. Jermell Charlo's a guy that fights with a mean streak. He likes to fight long and tall. He uses every single bit of his 5'11". He looks bigger. Actually, when you watch him in the ring, he actually looks like, okay, is this guy 6'2"? And in this fight, since he's fighting a guy who's 5'7.5", 5'8"-ish, it's going to look, much, much bigger. He's going to look like a bigger 6'2" type of boxer. But Jermell Charlo's a guy that likes to stay on his toes. He's going to fight long. He's going to fight lean. He's going to fight to his height, and he's going to stay behind the jab. He's going to try to stay long in the fight. The only way you can fight a guy like that is to take a lot of risks, which, could be bad for Castano. Could be bad for Charlo. Maybe he lands one and gets him into a brawl, and Jermell Charlo gets away from what he wants to do. Jermell Charlo wants to stay outside, stay long, lean behind the jab, and land long punches from far away and dictate the tempo of the fight that way. Castano has to get inside. So it's either a strategy that's going to work or it's going to get him knocked out in the first 5 or 6 rounds. It's a risky strategy, but it's the only strategy. There is no outpointing Jermell Charlo here. There is no outboxing Jermell Charlo here. He's going to have to fight him. He's going to have to turn this into essentially a street fight.
Yeah, he's going to have to get inside, and I can't remember who was fighting, but his coach was telling him, hey, you got to take that knife and dig it into the body. Dig it into the body. That's kind of what Castano is going to have to do, is get inside, go to the body, go to the head, use his footwork, right? Make sure that he cuts the ring off and that he's not always chasing the whole time. I think that's going to be really key, making sure that you moving laterally and using that lateral movement to make sure that he keeps Charlo in bay and keeps him within the realms of where he wants to be striking.
And use
head movement. Go ahead.
And use your height to your advantage. You're the smaller guy, get smaller. You're 5'7.5". Make sure that Jermell Charlo is fighting a guy who's 5'1" on fight night. Okay? Because if you're the smaller you get, the harder it is to hit, right? I know that it sounds weird, but it's the truth. The smaller you get, the smaller the target you give, the better it is to get inside. So get smaller. Be the smaller man. Embrace it.
It's almost like what Allen Iverson would do with the crossover, right? He would get so low with the crossover, you just couldn't touch it, right? So that's what Castano needs to do. He needs to get low, right? Like you said, make it 5'1", and on top of making himself hard to hit, he's going to be able to generate a little more power from his legs and follow through with those shots a little bit more. So I think that's going to be really important for him. Yeah, man, I think just as far as getting inside and continuing that pressure, man, pressure, that's going to be the key for Brian Castano. Any final thoughts on Castano before we get on to Jermell Charlo and what he needs to do as far as getting this win tonight? Or not tonight, Saturday night, tomorrow night.
Final thoughts on Castano is he's a legitimate opponent. It's fun to see Jermell Charlo take this fight because he really didn't need to take this fight. He could have just, procrastinated and tried to fight Jarrett Hurd, who's on the way out. Jarrett Hurd has looked terrible his last two fights since beating Erislandy Lara. Okay. So, obviously he wasn't going to take a fight against Erislandy Lara because nobody wants to fight Lara. But dabbling with one of the more dangerous guys at 154, yeah, Jermell Charlo deserves a lot of credit. This is a legitimate fight. This is no setup. You're watching a real fight on Saturday night.
This is almost kind of set up to be one of those fights that will turn out to be almost like an instant classic, right? It's the first 154-pound belt. You have a guy that loves to pressure, loves to get inside in Castano. Then you have a guy that's kind of like a sniper that'll pick you off, but can probably one of the most well-rounded boxer at 154, so he can do it multiple ways. I think this one has a setup to be one of the instant classics, if this division continues to move forward. But I think overall it's going to be a great fight. But let's get into Jermell Charlo a little bit more. Talk to me a little bit about what you see when you see Jermell Charlo, the fighter.
Jermell Charlo in my opinion, he's better than his brother. His brother has some bad habits that he's let fester. And I know it sounds odd saying that while the guy is 32-0, all right? But Jermell Charlo is not a guy that has any bad habits. Like, he actually sticks to his game plan. And like I said, he has a mean streak that Jermell hasn't really shown as of late, okay? So Jermell Charlo is a guy who he looks like a middleweight. Like, he was born to be middleweight champion. Long, lean, stays behind his jab. He snaps punches. You can tell he's twitchy. He's not a guy who lumbers at you, okay? You can tell he's a twitchy athlete.
It's a snappy, fast kind of reflex,
exactly.
Rubber band kind of snap.
He's a guy who is always going to make weight. He's going to train hard. There's rumor that he actually trains much, much harder than his brother. So, it's, put it this way. He moved up in weight to fight his brother. I would make him a 2-1 favorite because he does everything that his brother doesn't do well. He does it well. Jermell Charlo, in my opinion, is one of the best fighters in the world. And I would put him, I would say, man, if I start listing them, maybe he doesn't make my top 5, but I would say off the top of my head, he's probably in my top 5 pound for pound in the world.
So that's pretty,
while his brother is not.
Right, although his brother's undefeated, which speaks to the talent of what Jermell Charlo is able to do. Although he took that loss, like you said, which shouldn't have happened, he still was able to. He's still the more complete boxer. I want to say what's up to Alex M, saying what's up, brother. I appreciate you. Happy Friday, man. Happy Friday indeed. I hope you're off work hope you got everything done with the week and you're looking forward to some fights. We got some Bellator tonight as well. So if you don't want to catch some extra fights, Bellator tonight. Tomorrow we got the big show on PBC Showtime. Jermell Charlo versus Brian Castano for the Super Welterweight belt, undisputed champion for the first time. It's going to be a great one. But getting into Charlo, as far as what I saw from him, I mean, overall as a fighter, he's peaking right now, right? Where he's hitting his athletic prime. He's coming in. We saw the athletic ability early in his career, but now he's learning how to put the intellectual, put the boxing IQ, and add the mental to the physical, which really, the mental is the biggest part of the game, right? If you're able to figure out the mental, that's what makes you different from a star, from a generational talent. So if Jermell wants to become somebody that's generational, which by becoming the 154-pound undisputed champion, he can do, he's going to be able to show that he's, a complete star and show that he is generational. So I think, he looks good coming into this fight. As far as what his path needs to be, I think he needs to establish that range with that jab. I don't know where you're at with that, but I think having somebody smaller than him, that jab is going to be key. Where do you feel about that?
Yeah, he's going to have to snap it. He's going to have to throw it a lot just to keep him off of him and dictate the pace of the fight. Like, if he wants a knockout to make a statement and look good on TV and then call somebody out at 160 for a big money fight, or who knows, maybe stay at 154 and call up somebody like an Errol Spence. If he wants to do something like that and he wants a knockout, you could press the pace. You could press the pace behind your jab. But everything must start with the jab. You can't slug it out with Brian Castano because then you're going to fight his fight. And you shouldn't fight his fight because you have all the advantages here. You're the champion. Castano has to bring the fight to you. So just stay behind your jab, fight tall, make it, if you win a decision, who cares? It's not going to hurt your name. Everybody saw you come back from the Tony Harrison loss and dust off every single opponent since then, including Tony Harrison. Right. So, you can't hurt your name. The only way you can hurt your name is by actually trying to slug it out with Brian Castano to prove a point, because then all you're doing is what your brother has done as of late and look not as good. So, yeah, just stick to your game plan.
I want to get into this comment. What do you think? Spence versus Charlo. That's what I'm talking about. So Alex agrees with you. I think that would be a fun fight as well, especially long-term storytelling. I do the pro wrestling stuff here, right? I mean, you just beat the guy that beat you in the amateurs, right? So now you have a long-term storytelling here that can come into play. So that could be a fun one. I would like to see that as well. I mean, still not sure. Is Errol Spence? No, Terrence Crawford is fighting Pacquiao. Right?
No, Errol Spence is fighting.
So it is Errol Spence. Okay, so yeah. So if Errol Spence gets past that puzzle, maybe that's something you do. But as far as continuing on with Charlo, I think when Castano gets inside, he's gonna have to tie him up. Right? He's gonna have to make this fight, like you said, or avoid making this fight kind of something messy. Right? Once he gets inside, all right, I'm gonna tie you up. You're not gonna get inside and land too many strikes before I'm able to reestablish that range. And with having, I think, a 5-inch reach advantage, that's going to be super key because he's fighting somebody like we talked about is undersized. So if he's able to use the jab and keep him in bay, and then once he gets close, clinch him up, that's going to be a really good game plan for at least for the foundation to set into this fight. But as far as what he needs to do, I think that this fight, the counterpunching is going to come into play, right? Using that jab, using that overhand right. He has a nice left hook, straight right down the pipe. That timing and precision, I think that's going to really come into play as far as this fight because you have somebody that's going to be in your face all the time. So I want to get into your fight prediction. Or actually, if you have anything else to say on the on his path to victory, you can go ahead and break that down.
No, I said everything I could have thought of. All he has to do is just, he has a plan. The plan, everybody knows the plan, and all he has to do is go out and execute it. Stick to it because it's enough. It's enough. It should be enough. It's a fight game. Anything can happen, but it should be enough.
Right. Absolutely there. So, what do you think goes down this Saturday night? What is the official prediction of Mr. Alf?
Okay, I think Jermell Charlo is going to face some rough moments early because I think Castano's best shot is going to be early when he's going to try to press the pace. He's going to try to get into his chest. But I think Jermell Charlo, can Castano keep that pace up for 12 rounds and win a decision that way? Unlikely. That's not something that boxers do in modern day, right? So he's going to have to need a knockout, which means he's going to have to open himself up to get hit. I think Jermell Charlo starts finding counters by the 4th round, takes him out, let's call it the 8th round TKO, Jermell Charlo.
I feel like you were just thinking exactly what I'm thinking, because I'm right there with you, man. I think, as far as the magnitude of this fight, before we even talk about the fight, we talked about it a little bit, right? This is going to be one of the best fights of the year, in my opinion. I think the way this is set up, you have a pressure fighter against a sniper, right? And the magnitude of having this being an undisputed belt, plus having the styles make fights with two perfect styles, I think this is going to be a great fight. But I think the pressure of Castano is what's gonna actually lead him to his downfall. That's what he needs to do, but I think that's what's going to lead him to his downfall. I think he's going to, like you said, get his moments early. Charlo is going to make his reads. He's going to learn get the timing down, get the spacing down, get everything right. And once he's able to set the right traps, he'll set the trap and he'll put it down. So I think the pressure is necessary from Castano, but I think that's what's going to be the difference, is that he's going to be able to read it after a couple rounds. I don't think this is something that Charlo is going to be unable to figure out. Make his set his traps. I think for Charlo, he's going to set his traps really well. And I think that he's going to decide his weapon of choice, and he's going to deliver a knockout blow. I think he is going to get a knockout. You said 8th round. I was going to go 10th round. So I'm going to stick with 10th round right there. But yeah, I'm going with Charlo. I'm going 10th round. I think Castano gets a couple of the first rounds. I'll say maybe out of the first 5, he gets 3 of them because of his pressure. And, Texas judges love that pressure. So we'll see Castano take a couple of early rounds. If he's able to do more after that, I'd be quite surprised. I got Charlo by 10th round TKO.
That's about right.
So let me ask you the big question. Jermell Charlo gets this win. He's now the undisputed super welterweight champion, right? Who is his next fight?
That's a great question. Does he stick around at 154? A guy I'd love to see him fight, and I think he's on the way up, but I don't think there's any money there. It's Tim Tszyu. Tim Tszyu, people know the name sounds familiar. The way he spells it sounds familiar. And although he's from New Zealand, his father, Costa Tszyu, was world champion, I think a 4-division world champion, and straight up killer. But Tim Tszyu is kind of new to the game. He did dust off Jeff Horn. Jeff Horn, if you remember, is a guy that stole a fight off of Manny Pacquiao. So, this is like, we're connecting all the dots where everybody beat everybody, right? But so that's kind of interesting, right? But why would you fight a risky fight for, where's the money, right? Tim Tszyu is a guy that is probably down the road, although I'd love to see Jermell Charlo fight him. But that's a guy that's down the road. Why are you going to fight him for less money that you can get against somebody else who's probably not as risky, right? So a guy I'd love to see him fight is a guy that everybody ducks, and that's Erislandy Lara. Everybody ducks Erislandy Lara not because Lara has this great punching power, or he's going to knock you out in the first round, or knock you out with either hand. That's not the way he fights. Erislandy Lara is a guy that will make most fighters look bad because of his skill and how awkward he is. So why not prove what everybody else, doesn't seem to want to prove, and dust off Erislandy Lara, retire him, send him into retirement, what nobody else can or seems willing to do, right? So maybe Erislandy Lara makes sense. I know a lot of people keep talking about, move up to 160 and fight your brother. No, that is not going to happen. He's already said, I'm not fighting my brother. So, you could dump those questions. At 154, I think there's nothing for him. Jared Hurd is on the way out. Like I said, Erislandy Lara. Super fight, Gennady Golovkin, Triple G. He's at 160, right? Now, are you going to take that fight from your brother? It's an interesting dynamic, right?
Right.
It's an interesting dynamic. Your brother's at 160 right now.
Are they both under one umbrella, promotion-wise?
Yes, same promotion. So your brother's at 160. So are you going to sneak in under him and say, hey, I'll fight Triple G and I'll take the money? And then what? Your brother just looks at you like, what?
Does his brother win the fight, though? The brother?
Against Triple G?
Yeah.
Ooh, it's a rough one, right?
Right.
It's tough. I think that's a tough one for him. Although, you never know, because Triple G is an older guy now. He's not,
right.
I feel while, when he was fighting Canelo those 2 times, those were pick-em fights. Like now, if he fought Canelo now, I think Canelo is a clear favorite. A clear 2-1 favorite against Triple G. Based on nothing other than age. Based on nothing other than Canelo is in his prime. smack dab in his prime, and Triple G is on the way out. Still great, but on the way out. So maybe move up to 160 and take your chances with Triple G. Maybe Jaime Munguia at 160. Have Jaime Munguia come down a little bit. All of those are real fights for him at 160. But if he moves up to 160, his brother's there trying to unify. Is his brother going to move up to 168? There's this dynamic, and essentially they're blocking each other, right?
Right.
Like if they weren't brothers, Jermell Charlo could say, screw you, I'll get the fight with Triple G, the big payday, and a super fight. Like everybody will tune in for something like that. Jermell Charlo versus Triple G? Absolutely. But
Alex wants to know, is he popular enough for Triple G? Do you think after this win, after unifying, I think after, my opinion, obviously you know much more about boxing than me. My opinion is once he unifies, that's in a much more attractive fight.
Yes. Yeah, once he unifies, he has all the gold. And moving up to 160, there's two ways to look at it, all right? Is he big enough, quote unquote, big enough for Triple G? Absolutely. Okay. Is he attractive enough an opponent for Triple G? Absolutely. It'll be his first fight at 160. Triple G might say, you know what? I'm getting him at just the right time. Let's have a super fight for a lot of money, a big name, a Jermell Charlo. Who knows? Maybe you bill it as, you know what? I'm going to take on both brothers. Jermell first. You know what I mean?
Take out the tougher one first?
Yeah. He'll be the easier one to beat in Triple G's eyes because it'll be the guy fighting his first fight at 160.
Right. He's working his way up.
Yeah. Welcome to 160. Your first opponent is Gennady Golovkin.
Right. That's quite a welcome. That's that's like going in WWE and then you have to face Brock Lesnar on your first night. It's like,
yeah. Now, if you're talking about a lesser opponent at 160, Chris Eubank Jr., not easy. Chris Eubank Jr. would be. There's a bunch of killers at 160. It's not easy for Jermell Charlo at 160. Chris Eubank Jr., that could get me excited as well. So it's really, really hard to say. There's a lot of fights for him at 160. There's some at 154, but it's really hard to say because essentially his brother's kind of blocking him for now, till his brother says, "Hey, hello, I'm going to 168."
And how likely do you think he is to go to 168? Do you think that's something that's imminent, or do you think that's something that's unsure of happening right now?
Well, he did something really, really good in his last fight, which was not look good and stay undefeated, right? So maybe Canelo Alvarez says, you know what? That super fight you kept talking about, let's do it now at 168. And once he leaves at 168, he vacates. And once he vacates, who's going to fight for those belts? His brother could step in to take those belts, right? So, yeah, it's going to take money. But it's a weird thing, right? It's a weird dynamic because one is blocking the other, but Jermell could just stay at 154 and try to clean up that division. But what? Where's the money? The money's at 160. I think at least the big money fights are at 160, unless you're going to call up a Spence to 154. But, Spence, he's not done milking that 147 division yet. And there is a super fight at 147 that nobody's making, which is Spence Crawford. So, it's a weird but very interesting dynamic. And the one domino, of course, that can fall is Jermell Charlo just saying, hey, goodbye 160, I'm headed to 168. That will put everything into place.
And it's so much more interesting when you have two brothers at the top of the divisions and two separate divisions that are right next to each other. Alex, I'm saying chase some money. I agree. After we win this fight, like you said, you could go and you can fight, Lara and make yourself kind of look bad, but take the tough fight. I mean, that's what he's doing right now, right? Charlo has shown, Jermell has shown to take the tougher fights and start to, work his way back. So, because this is a fight he did not really have to take. Like we talked about a little bit, he did not have to take this fight. So now that he's coming, he's taking this fight. If he gets this win, maybe he wants to go prove himself for another, but I agree. I think the better option for him, try to chase that money fight. Just find one that'll work for you. With being the undisputed champ, your name will have a little bit more, pizzazz to it. If he lands a viral knockout, that'll add a little bit more to it as well.
Absolutely.
All right, man. So you have any final thoughts on the boxing card? Any undercard fights that you think on
I don't know what's on the undercard. If you have the undercard, that'd be a cool thing.
Yeah, let me read it up to you. So we have Jermell Charlo versus Brian Castano, obviously. And then you have Romero versus Anthony Yigot, Emmanuel Elim versus Alim Carvajal, Bakram Murtazaliev versus Kyrie Gray, Pablo
Okay.
that's Pablo Rubio Jr. Eric versus Eric Manriquez, Ahmed Medina versus Reginald Hinson, Levi West versus Roberto Zavala Jr., and then Xavier Nunez versus David Alfaro.
They're all prospects, you know. Rolando Romero is going to be an interesting guy to watch, but the rest of the guys, they're all prospects. They're up and comers. I don't know if I can spot like a knockdown drag out, although I could last week. Right? Like I told you last week, what was that co-main event? I told you, man, that thing's going to be a hell of a fight. Sure enough, it was.
Oh yeah, man, last week. Oh man, what was it? I have it on my phone. I think I was actually taking notes on it in that fight. Because the main event was, who was the main event? It was that Cuban dude that we were talking about being like 65 years old, even though he was listed at 30 or something like that. That's who was fought. That's who fought last weekend, right?
Yes. Yeah, Sullivan Barrera. What was the name of the guy? 120. They fought at 126.
What was the main event for last weekend? I can look it up right now.
Was Sullivan Barrera against Ramirez, right? I believe so. Yeah, yeah. And then the other fight, which was a great fight, man.
I got it right here.
What was that fight? We were talking about it.
I got it. The Diaz versus Fortuna.
Yes, Fortuna, which he was upset, and now Joseph Diaz is like, he's at the top of the world, like he's at the top of the food chain now, so he could ask for whoever he wants, and Fortuna kind of has to go, back to the drawing board, really, But yeah, that was a hell of a fight. I thought that was a great fight.
Very interesting statistic on that fight. I'm going to share my screen right now. And I'm going to let me pick the tab. Let me make sure I get it right.
By the way, you watched that fight. I didn't have a problem with the decision.
No, not at all. The votes had Diaz with 117 predictions on Tapology. Diaz was voted for 81% over Fortuna.
Yeah, I just thought that the judges, if you look at the punch stat, it was a lot closer than that 81% right there.
Oh, that's fan voted. That's before the fight happened. That's not during the fight. That's before the fight.
Well, that makes sense because the fight was in Staples Center, right? And Joseph Diaz is a Mexican, so everybody's going to be for him. But I felt that the judges really just did, and I believe that I think it was Steve Farhood who said it. The judges just didn't like Fortuna's style. They didn't like his herky-jerky in and out, quick combination style. I guess they felt that it wasn't effective at all. But
yeah, which is really interesting because it was more effective than the judges led on for it to be, right? He was getting his shots in. I mean, it was a really close fight. It was a really close fight. I mean, it came down to
the judges didn't think so though. The judges it was all by the spreads. What were the spreads? By 4 rounds each of the cards, right?
Yeah.
And one of the cards had it by 5 rounds, right?
That made no sense to me. I think it was a much closer fight than the judges made it out to be. I mean, Diaz was slightly the favorite, but I don't know if that fight was. I don't know if that fight was as close or as far.
Yeah, as lopsided as everybody thought it was.
I think it was a pretty close fight. What do we have coming up in the future as far as boxing?
Oh, let me look it up.
Next weekend isn't the Errol Spence. That's in August, right?
Yes, that's August 24th, I believe.
And then Woodley's going to be in August as well. The Woodley versus Jake Paul.
All right, in July we have what we have, which is Jermell Charlo, Brian Castano. And then July 24th, Joe Joyce, that's going to be an interesting – that's a heavyweight eliminator fight. That's going to be an interesting fight to watch against Carlos Takam. But, like something really, really that, that's going to float most people's boat as far as like a hot fight. Man, Chris Algieri again versus TBA, which is to be announced. It doesn't matter who the hell that is. It's Chris Algieri. That's going to be fun to watch, okay? Although that's on Triller TV on August 3rd. Michael Conlan, August 6th. That's going to be interesting. I don't know his opponent. TJ Donahue. I don't know his opponent, but Michael Conlan is popular. He's fun to watch. Yeah, there's really nothing in the near future. Joshua Franco, Andrew Maloney, nah, that doesn't do it for me either. Okay, August 14th, Guillermo Rigondeaux against John Riel Casimiro. Guillermo Rigondeaux is very famous for fighting a super fight against Vasily Lomachenko. Vasily Lomachenko destroyed him and essentially destroyed his career because he hasn't been the same since. He's older. Remember, he's a Cuban champion. So he says he's 37, which means he's probably 72. So he's on the way out. Virgil Ortiz, August 14th.
Can you pronounce his opponent's name?
Virgil, I'm usually really, really good at these things. All right. You ready?
Yes, sir.
Egidus Kavluskas.
Oh, wow. That was actually really good. I'm gonna put this on the screen for the fans to see. That's not an easy name to pronounce.
Okay. And then, yeah, we're moving on to August 21st. August 21st, Errol Spence Jr. versus Manny Pacquiao. Then, not for nothing, but August 28th, the following week, David Benavidez against let me see.
Uzcategui?
Yeah. Uzcategui, maybe?
Uzcategui sounds better than what I said it.
Yeah, and then, of course, August 29th, Jake Paul's beginning to annoy me. I'll be rooting for Tyron Woodley in that fight.
I mean, honestly, I hate Jake Paul. Don't get me wrong. I absolutely hate the guy, but I love what he did with the chain with McGregor and giving it to Poirier. Man, that's absolute gold. Since it's Dustin Poirier, it's absolute diamonds, man. Absolute.
And
diamonds.
if you really want to go, oh, by the way, that chain was, did it cost him $100,000? I have my doubts.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. But if we could leap into September 4th, Josh Warrington against Mauricio Lara, that is a knockdown dragout. That has fight of the year written all over it.
And then the next weekend, you got Oscar Valdez fighting too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it picks up around September. It picks up. It really does. There's some nice stuff. Jesus Christ, Oscar De La Hoya versus Vitor Belfort.
Yeah, I looked at that too.
Hey, man, September 25th, Anthony Joshua against Alexander Usyk. Fuck around and get dropped back down to the bottom of the division. You know what I mean?
Imagine? I mean, that's going to be a great weekend because we have that. And then that's going to be the same weekend of 266 where you're going to have Ortega versus...
Yeah, they start hitting us in September with fight after fight after fight. Stephen Fulton versus Brandon Figueroa, September 11th. That's a huge fight, of course. And then, of course, October 9th, Tyson Fury, Deontay Wilder. That's the new date for that one. So, yeah, we get busy around September. But after this Saturday, man, it's a long trek to August 21st. Yeah. Hopefully the UFC picks it up, which they will, I believe. I believe they have some cards coming up.
Well, we have next week. Actually, let's get into a couple of the other shows we have coming up. We have obviously after this weekend show, Moises versus Islam Makhachev. Supposedly one of the next Dagestani great wrestlers. I'll be live after that. Appreciate you, Alex. You think Woodley's gonna let us down, man? Oh, that's rough. But yeah, that Oscar fight's gonna be funny against Belfort. I'll be live right after the Moises versus Makhachev fight. See how that goes, and I'll be live streaming that as well. If anybody decides to hop on, we'll hop on. But we'll have that as well. We'll have post-fight coverage in the week coming up on walkouts and knockouts. We'll keep you dialed in here on Fight Week on 5 with all your best boxing coming up. And if we have, I know you're a big fan of TJ Dillashaw, so I think next weekend we're going to do a Dillashaw version of Fight Week on 5. So we'll probably do that. That's going to be a great fight, probably a number one contenders fight in the bantamweight division. And man, great fights coming up. Nick Diaz just got shouted back to come back. Him versus Robbie Lawler too. Quick thoughts on that one?
Quick thoughts. A guy had the best tweet of the week, I think. There's been some pretty good tweeting this week, all right? Some really, really funny stuff. But a guy posted a picture of like a baby and is saying, when I saw Nick Diaz versus Lawler 1, and then has a picture of a grown man and says, I'm ready for Nick Diaz versus Robbie Lawler part 2.
Oh my God.
I don't know how far apart it is, but
17 years.
That's a record. That's a record in combat sports. It has to be. Remember when we were making fun of what was it?
Was it Nog? Big Nog versus Rogero?
Yeah. But no, we were also making fun of Chocolatito
Oh yeah,
Gonzalez
yeah.
versus who was it against Valdez, right?
Mm-hmm.
Was it?
Yeah. I think that's what it was. J
But
Rock
they
went to that
fought.
show.
They were fight of the year 9 years ago, and then they fight the rematch this year.
That's
Does that
crazy.
make any sense? That you had fight of the year, and then you said, you know what, we'll get the rematch, but we'll get it in 9 years.
Hey, but it lived up
And
to
sure
it,
enough,
right?
it was a great. Hey, it lived
was
up
great.
to it. It was a great fight, right? But yeah, this has to be a record. 17 years apart. Yeah, has to be.
Alex saying he's going to be there live. Go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't. If anybody knows, hit me up on Twitter. Hit up Jonathan on Twitter. If you have any time that two guys fought each other again in more than 17 years apart, let us know, because I don't think it exists. I don't think it's ever happened.
Yeah, that's definitely the longest, probably the longest fight time between fights, unless you want to go probably, undergrounds. Everybody knows, only a couple people watching right now, but if you liked what you saw, smash the like button as well. That helps us out. It's free, helps us get in the algorithm. So if you like,
I'll give you something funny. Now that I think about it, now that we have the dates of the fight, my daughter was a year old when Lawler and Nick Diaz fought. She's graduating high school this year.
Wow. That's crazy.
So that's how long it's been. That's going to be fun. That's going to be a fun fight. I'm going to be interested in seeing it.
Alex M saying Ken Shamrock. Do you think Ken Shamrock? He fought in what, 1996, 1997? When was his last fight? I'm gonna look it up on Sherdog real quick.
I think he had a fight with Don Fry. I think could that have been? Did he fight Fry in Pride and then fought him later in the UFC? Is that possible? But not 17 years. There's no way 17 years.
Wait. No, he fought Royce Gracie in 2016.
Oh, okay.
On Bellator. And he fought Royce Gracie in UFC 1 in 93. So that's 23 years. That was before I was born to when I was like 20 years old.
That's insane.
That's a nuts time between.
I'm old enough to remember when I used to tune in for the UFCs, and everybody used to just wonder at Royce Gracie, like, what is this wizardry that he keeps pulling? Like, he keeps choking everybody. And now, now it's just like, okay, that's a rear naked choke that he's doing. That's an arm bar.
It's like so casual now, but it's like watching those things back then. It's like crazy what he's doing. And the funny thing is, he went out there full gi. Like he went out there with his gi. He would use his gi, and it was perfect. But hey, Alex, great call on that one. As far as being there live, that's my birthday weekend. I was actually they called me yesterday about you. I don't know if you UFCVIP.com. They were selling tickets for the Apex. They're $2,000, which isn't not my price point. But if anybody wants to know the price of going to the UFC Apex, it's $2,000. So not too bad, honestly. You're getting dinner, you're getting a couch. You're not sitting in an arena. You're sitting on a couch right in front of the UFC Apex. So pretty cool there. But I asked them about UFC 266 because it's my birthday weekend. So I was thinking, fly out to Vegas, watch that nice featherweight fight. I mean, Nick Diaz is going to be there in a 5-round main event. I don't really care for the Shevchenko-Lauren Murphy fight too much because I think that's a squash match. But yeah, that's going to be a fun one. I think
I got to catch up on the Ultimate Fighter show. When is that finale?
It should be in 2 or 3 weeks. Okay. I think it's on week 6 right now. Week 6 or 6.
And they'll put that on a pay-per-view, or they'll put that on a fight night. That has to be on a fight night, right? The finale.
Oh yeah. The finale is probably going to be a fight night.
Okay.
Yeah, they'll probably make it a fight night because usually what they do is they'll make it a fight night the week before, I think, the UFC 266. So we'll see if they make that card out there. But Alex was asking if some boxer come back. I think he's talking about Oscar De La Hoya versus Vitor.
Yeah,
that might be it. So that might be it. You think Vitor's getting knocked out, right? Because he's not on steroids no more.
Yeah, the pictures on Vitor Belfort, like from one fight to the next, they're ridiculous.
Nuts.
They're the funniest things I've ever seen in my life. They really are.
They're great, man.
By the way, it's funny that he brings up Ken Shamrock before, and that's another great question. I guess we could go out on this since we're nearing almost 50 minutes. And since you should plug your wrestling show.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So anybody that watches.
Before I do that, and maybe you have one, better crossovers from combat sports to pro wrestling. Is it Brock Lesnar? He has to be the best.
Yeah.
Ronda Rousey's in the conversation. But I'll tell you, Ken Shamrock, he was the OG. He was really, really good as a crossover star. So I'll ask you one question. Anybody today that you think could be pro wrestling star tomorrow?
Colby Covington. I think
you nailed it.
Everybody.
Do you think he's big enough? Do you think he's big enough?
He's 100. He cuts down to 170, so he's probably 190. That's true. That would be a tough sell because WWE, but he would fare really well in AEW.
Yeah, I do. I have one simple thing. It's the Roman Reigns test. Roman Reigns is 6'3", 260. How would he look standing next to Roman Reigns? You know what I mean?
He would look kind of like what's probably like similar to what Seth Rollins was. Appreciate you, Adam, for hopping in on us, man. Alex, I'm saying Connor's a little too small. I think he would be really hard because remember WWE has their 205.
Connor has to fight like Darby Allin or something.
Yeah, that would be a good fight. You could put him against him, MJF, maybe Ricochet.
Yeah.
But Nate would be great in WWE. That would be that's true as well because his in octagon antics are similar to what somebody would want to do in ring. I mean, look at what he almost finished Leon Edwards with. He almost finished him with a slap right hand, left straight, like a straight left. So nuts. It'd be fun. Nate would be a fun one. Another guy that actually did cross over back in the day who was pretty cool. I love David Tank Abbott. I don't know if you remember Tank Abbott, but Tank Abbott was a personality, man. This guy did not want to do anything except like punch dudes in the face. Like he didn't care for the ground game. He always talked about it. Like he didn't care. He was like the true, hey, screw having a ground game.
I'll tell you what, I got one. I got one that I think he could go straight from right now the booth to main eventing WrestleMania. What about Daniel Cormier?
Oh, absolutely.
Daniel Cormier versus Brock Lesnar main event WrestleMania. You don't even have to have a belt for that fight. Excited or not?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if R.I.P. Ariel Helwani in the DC show. That was a phenomenal show. I missed that show so much. I mean, Helwani got his own thing going on now, but DC and Helwani was a funny show, man. But as far as that, DC and they were calling out Booker T because I don't know if you've watched that, but Booker T or DC and Helwani, they were talking about DC crossing over to pro wrestling, Helwani being his manager, stuff like that, and then Booker T was talking about, hey, you can't come out here and come in this business. Like there haven't been other guys that have come over and crossed over. And then I'm not sure if it's a shoot or if it's a work, but then Cormier came back at Booker T saying, hey, man, like I will beat you in the octagon and I will beat you in a wrestling ring. So, hey, that would be a fun one as well. But I think the Brock Lesnar fight would be great. I don't know if that happens because there's actual so much heat, like real heat between them. It would be kind of hard to happen. But I think you nailed it. I think it'd be Cormier. Cormier would probably be the most realistic heavyweight champion that you can put in there. But as far as octagon skills or mic skills or a promo, I think Colby Covington or like Alex said, Nate Diaz would be great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I don't think I think he has too many leg injuries and lower extremity injuries. Stipe Miocic, he has the size. Like he'll look great standing next to Roman Reigns, but I think he has too many extremity issues to be able to wrestle.
Cain Velasquez hopped in. Remember when Cain Velasquez came in and he helped Rey Mysterio?
Yeah,
I forgot about that. Cain Velasquez crossed over.
Although he has injuries too. Like,
yeah, he does.
And he has a lot of injuries that prevent him. And
John Jones would be great.
John Jones would be awesome. Although Cain Velasquez against Brock Lesnar, I thought was going to be great, and I thought it was terrible.
Yeah, awful, absolutely awful. You can't fake an MMA kind of fight. You know what I mean? Like AEW tried to do it, and people that
Cain also. And look, let's not. I'm a huge Brock Lesnar fan, in and out of the octagon and in WWE. I think he's one of the most effective WWE champions of all time. All right, but Cain Velasquez also, his style became more. He's a luchador. His style against Brock Lesnar, I don't think worked really.
Right.
So I think that matchup was doomed from the start.
Yeah, that's a tough one to build.
I'll give you an obvious one. Francis Ngannou dusts off 4 or 5 guys, sign him up for $5 million a year at WWE. He's main event against Roman Reigns.
But he can't wrestle, right? He's going to be a one-trick pony.
You don't think? You don't think Francis Ngannou? He's a super athlete. You don't think he could get in the Performance Center for a few months?
Fair point. He could deliver. He could
power.
He could probably do it. He's That man is big as fuck. Like, he's unreal. He has to cut down to make the heavyweight limit. Alex asking best foreign MMA fighter that can transition to WWE. Because we're talking a lot of Americans talking about foreign people. That's a good question.
Well, it's a miracle that George St. Pierre hasn't done it, because George St. Pierre is a guy that actually looks all right. Because George St. Pierre, I believe he's like 5'10", but
yeah, he's somewhere around there.
But his build is all right. Like, you could put him in against a lot of guys that are like
he's probably 200 walking around, or like 190.
Yeah, so it's a miracle that George St. Pierre hasn't done that yet, but he's perfect for it. Another guy,
go ahead.
Another guy, I'm not so sure. As a one-off, maybe Michael Bisping, because he can talk, and he looks good, and he's tall. So all of those things work, And I'll give you a good one. Why not Shogun Rua?
That's a really good choice.
He even has a great nickname going in. King of the Streets, right?
That would work. I think I don't know if it would work as far as Izzy, dude. Izzy would be phenomenal. I don't know. He's my favorite fighter. I don't know why I didn't think of Izzy. Izzy would be great. Masvidal might be great too, right? Masvidal is one of those guys that can come.
He's too small. You saw him on AEW.
Yeah, he's a
small guy.
You know who cut a great promo? I'm gonna cut. If you want to follow some things pro wrestling, make sure you check out One Fall on the 5 Reasons YouTube channel. It's been me, Sean Stanley, and Jakari, who's also does, I think, the Dolphin stuff with you, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, we all do the pro wrestling stuff. It's gonna be Thursday at 9:00 every night. So if you want some more pro wrestling talk, we'll have you there. Alex saying Izzy is your favorite, dude. Good taste, man. Good taste. Appreciate you for having the show, for having you on the comments the whole time, checking us out. But as far as the Izzy thing goes, I think Izzy would be phenomenal, man. I think Izzy could be one of those guys. Who else would be there? I mean, Mark Coleman,
Hunt.
Right?
Mark Hunt.
Yeah, Mark Hunt would be great.
What about? Does he have the oh yeah, absolutely. But does Mark Hunt have the name recognition to to walk into the ring when Roman Reigns is cutting a promo and face him down? No, right?
No. It would have to be like somebody like DC. It would have to be somebody like John Jones. It would have to be somebody like Francis. You can probably say Derek Lewis. Derek Lewis would probably be great.
Hey, Derek Lewis. He starts talking. He's fun to listen to. Yes, Derek Lewis. Absolutely. He's one of them. In fact, that's probably where he's headed, because he can't seem to make this fight against Francis Ngannou. He's going to fight Cyril Gane, right? Is that his next fight?
That's official for the interim belt, which is stupid. But it's official for the interim belt.
Yeah, and I understand what Dana White was saying. Francis Ngannou, you got to make the fight, to get paid. But, come on, let's make the fight already. I don't know what's holding it up.
Maybe just give me Ngannou versus John Jones. Francis versus Brock.
I think Francis Ngannou is getting really, really good advice. It's somebody telling him, dude, you lose to Derek Lewis, you're throwing away a huge payday against John Jones. Yeah. Let's hold out for that fight. That's the fight you're fighting next. You know what I mean?
Versus Brock on roids. That would be funny. Overeem. Overeem has the mic skills. He has the build for it too. He has the kickboxing. I think that would be good.
But it has to be a guy that walks through the curtain and everybody says, "Oh, it's that guy."
Yeah,
you know
exactly. Exactly. I
think DC's probably the only guy, and Colby, of course.
If you can have Colby against somebody like a Seth Rollins. I think you could probably put him up against somebody like Roman Reigns, because he has that wrestling background, right? Because you'd have that. It'd be a little bit more of a tough sell, but I think you could do it. It would be hard against somebody like Bobby Lashley, somebody who's a true heavyweight, fights in the heavyweight division in MMA. Dana White power trips. Yeah, probably have Dana. That's true, but who cut a great promo was who's the guy that runs AT? It's slipping my mind right now. The guy who runs ATT Miami.
Oh yeah, it's Dan
Lambert. Dan Lambert.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw the promo that he cut on AEW.
Yeah, he cut a monster promo.
He cut a phenomenal promo on AEW, man. He was great.
And they kept cutting to the look on Jorge Masvidal's face, and Jorge Masvidal was like, Is this a shoot or is this a work or what?
Like, what's going? Like, he didn't know how to sell it, which was funny because
He was like, "Is this happening for real?"
Right? Like, is he really going out there and he's talking shit to this crowd? Like, I can only fight so many people at once. Me and the greatest female athlete of all time, Amanda Nunes. Like, we can only do that. We can only do so much for one time.
How do we skip over that one?
Oh,
you just said it.
Amanda Nunes.
How do we skip over that?
That's a great point. That's a great because
there's nobody left to fight. There's nobody left to fight. Where can she make $4 or $5 million a year?
Yeah,
the WWE.
But the thing with WWE,
as long as they don't ruin her too,
they would. That's what I was gonna say, bro. They would ruin her. They would have her lose to fucking Nikki Ash. You know
how I book her? I book her like this. I tell her, Amanda, what would you say to $15 million for 3 years? If she says no, I tell her, hey, good luck in the UFC. But if she says yes, I tell her, guess what? Be ready to be undefeated for 3 years. But you're dropping the belt in 3 years. We're going to try to figure out who you're going to drop it to in 3 years.
You could probably build up Shayna Baszler. She'll be the right person, right? She has that character.
But I'd make her a throwback to the wrestling days in the 80s and 90s where you had a super champion, where the champion was just the champion, was the champion. She would go into every pay-per-view, squash somebody, get out. See you on Monday. You know what I mean? Or SmackDown. See you on SmackDown.
I think that would make it a tough sell because, for the beginning period of time, I think it'd be great. But
you don't think the modern wrestling fan could buy that? It's Amanda Nunes. She doesn't lose.
Yeah. Fair point. She can come in, she kicks some ass, choke some bitches out, and get
You think it'll get old? You think it'll get old like by 18 months in of her squashing everybody? People will be like, "Oh my god, here she goes. She's gonna squash somebody again."
Yeah, I think that's would be it. Alex said it perfectly though. She'd be the new China. They want Paige Van Zandt. That's why they have Eva Marie and the most beautiful woman in wrestling, Carmella. Fighting, right? That's WWE's garbage now. So we'll get to that later. Any final thoughts on the show overall, Charlo? Anything coming up? Any wrestlers? Anything else as well?
Nah, enjoy it. It's gonna be a fun fight on Saturday. It's a legit fight. It's not a setup. They've given us some setups as of late. This is a real one. Jermell Charlo is in some danger. I think he pulls it out though, because he's a real deal. He's a top five. He's a top 5 pound for pound guy, in my opinion.
I agree with you there. Alex, Cyborg, I do agree. Cyborg would be a good one as well. That would be a fun one as well. But as far as the Jermell Charlo fight, I think like we talked about not ad nauseum, but a little bit earlier, that he's gonna get this win. He's probably gonna knock him out. It's gonna be a really good fight. I think it's one that's still flying under the radar because, like you said, smaller division. But I think the magnitude of this fight plus the styles of these fighters, a pressure fighter versus a sniper, it's gonna make for an absolute great fight. So we want to thank you everybody for watching in the comments down below. Make sure, like I said, hit that like button for us. It's free, right? It helps us out a lot. Makes us get a little bit bigger. Obviously, most of you guys are probably Miami Heat fans as well. So it'll help out the big time on the Miami Heat stuff as well. So we appreciate you. Alf, I appreciate you joining me as well. Alex, in the comments, dude, you were chatting with us the entire time. Thanks for joining with us. Thanks to Big Banks Barai for joining us. So let up as well. Hop in us for a little bit as well. And as always, thank you for joining Fight Week on 5, brought to you by the 5 Reasons Sports Network. From Alf and Johnathan, I hope you guys have a great day and enjoy the fight.